So with the crush card going on, most places are shut down, and rightly so. We need to be doing what we can in order to keep ourselves safe, as well as those around us safe as well. Having said that, my locals is open. So I went. Now keep in mind this is something that you should frankly not be doing. Stay home, stay safe, don't interact with other people, maintain social distancing, do whatever you can to make sure you and your family are safe. Even though it looks like there's not going to be any in-person tournaments for quite a while, sometimes you just get that itch to play with cardboard, and well, if nobody else can go to local tournaments and give reports on how the metagame is shaping up, I may as well do so. Obviously, the online landscape is a huge battlegrounds for figuring out what is going to be competitive, what isn't, and going from there. But there's nothing quite like playing right across the table from somebody, picking up their cards, reading them, and still have no idea what the hell they're going to do next. So, this is going to be my report of how locals went for the first time going back since quarantine has started. So, obviously if you're going to play in a tournament, you need a deck. So this week I decided to go with Adamantipator's. I realize that it's not the most innovative deck in the world, but if there's one thing that it is, it's consistent. And when you're trying to top a locals or even a bigger event, you need consistency. So we figured we'd try it out and see how it did. Obviously the majority of this deck is pretty similar to every other list you're going to see out there. You're going to see the 3 Analyzers, 3 Researchers, 3 Seekers, 3 Block Dragon, 3 Doki Doki. That's all very standard. We're playing the Weeping Idol and the Gigantes as our Block Dragon targets to be able to search, 3 Guardian, 3 Petting Cessor, all of this very, very standard. The one tech card that my team is playing that's slightly different than others, and we haven't seen a ton of this out there before, is Hat Tricker. And this card is insane. It's a level 4 Earth that summons itself whenever just 2 monsters are on the board, not an activated effect. Doesn't even have to be all of your monsters. One of yours and one of your opponents, perfectly fine. So it's a free extender when you open multiples of it, because a lot of the times when you open Adhara or Petting Cessor and multiples, it's kind of a dead card because you can't even discard it off of Doki. At least with Hat Tricker, you can be able to summon multiple times throughout the turn. Obviously, we're still playing O-Line to be able to facilitate a lot of our Martial Metal Marcher combos and just be able to go off from there. We are main decking the Dragon Bust and Destruction Sword because what I found through a lot of testing is even if you get hand trapped 2 or 3 times, so long as you can end on this, 90% of the time you're still winning the game. So it's absolutely worth having a Guardian in the deck. If you don't open it and you can get to it, you're just gonna win the game. We're playing 2 unexpected die targets, the Angel Trumpeter as well as the Beta. The Angel Trumpeter honestly comes in clutch a lot more often than you would think, specifically because it's a tuner. Yes, being in an Earth and a level 4 is relevant, but there are just gonna be hands where all you're gonna open is a Guardian, Petting Cessor, Hat Tricker, and an unexpected die, with no way to get a tuner otherwise, so you have to go with Trumpeter. For hand traps, all we're playing is 3 Nibiru. Short, sweet, and simple. A lot of the times you can just break through boards if you need to, going second, so we don't play a ton of hand traps in the main. Plus, this can still be discarded off of Doki Doki or summoned off of Raptite if you absolutely need a body in a pinch. Lastly, we're playing our 4th Block Dragon and Foolish Burial, and then the 3 unexpected dies. For the extra deck, very, very similar lineup to every other list you're going to see. Dragite, Raptite, Borreload Savage. Cyber's Integrator is a one-of that not everybody plays, but we think is really, really necessary to the deck to be able to help make Union Carrier, as well as help you to dig more into your deck by letting you draw a card. We're also playing Herald, Martial Metal Marcher, which is obvious, Gallant Granite, Access Code, and Appaloosa. Not everybody plays these 2, but they come up all the time and can really, really win you the game a lot of the times as well. Alka-Fibrax, Masquerena, Cerberus, Unicorn, Link Cross, and Union Carrier. Again, all very standard for the most part. All they do is just help you set up boards or break them going second. Obviously, your side deck should be tailored to whatever your locals looks like, and my locals has a lot of Orcust and a lot of Geist. So we play a lot of back row hate as well as the Lancias. We play the Dark Rulers whenever we see, the Mirror Match or any other combo deck as well. That just helps you win games. Lightning Storms and Twin Twisters for back row decks, Reboot for back row decks, Midbreaker for going first, so whenever they side in a lot of impermanences or effect veilers, ghost mourners, and things like that, they're effectively dead. And then the Saki one of Pankratops. Being an Earth makes it just that much better, and then going second is one of the best ways to just clear stuff off the board. So, that's the list. Let's see how it did. So round 1 we played against Cyber Dragons. We ended up winning the die roll, which for us is kind of a weird decision because if I go first and I set up my big board, that's great. Cyber Dragons are known for just busting out all of their interactions and being able to OTK easily through boards. I also knew that if I was able to set up the Buster Lock that I'd probably be in a pretty good position to win because they need their extra deck in order to break said boards. Our opening hand wasn't amazing. We opened up with an Analyzer, a Beta, a Researcher, a Guardian, and one other card that I can't remember. But for the most part, I didn't really have a way to get out and negate before I started sending off my combos. So, we normal summon the Researcher, special summon the Seeker, and start using their effects. We thankfully hit a Doki Doki off of the Seeker Search, so we can summon that and discard one of the Guardians that's in our hand in order to get out another Guardian to bait out an interaction. From there we make Needle Fiber, which unfortunately gets met with an infinite impermanence, but thankfully we still have a tuner on board, so we can go into a lot of our Link Cross play still. We were eventually able to keep going, and thankfully with a couple of lucky hits off of our Raptite as well as our Researcher that we had summoned, we were able to set up a Boral Savage equipped with the Buster Lock. And that's about it. Again, like I had said, Cyber Dragons need their extra deck in order to break through these boards to contact fuse and defuse their big monsters and stuff, so without access to that, I think we're in a pretty good position. Still have a couple of cards in my hand and be able to be set up for next turns just in case. My opponent is actually able to get out 2 Cyber Dragons, a Core, and an Aster, but with no way to go to the extra deck in order to link those off or to XE summon, there's not really much he can do here, other than swinging over my Link Cross and then going over my Union Carrier as well. After that, he has to pass and plays back on me. From there, I'm able to make a big board, break through everything, and easily kill him, and we're going into Game 2. Game 2, I wasn't really sure what he was going to make me do, just because after seeing the Buster Lock, he knew that he was going to be at a real disadvantage if he let me go first. So because of that, I honestly expected him to want to go first in order to try and out that. So I sided in a lot of my going second cards, and just trying to get something going to where, we'll be able to break through a lot of his interruptions. Unfortunately for my opponents, he opted to let me go first again, which again, for Cyber Dragons is not the worst thing in the world. If I can't get to my Buster Lock, he's got a pretty good shot at breaking my board. I will say, I don't think my opponent was very knowledgeable about the matchup as a whole. He didn't really understand what a lot of the cards did or how those kind of interactions worked. And so, as you'll see later on in this combo, my opponent actually had 3 infinite impermanences in his hand, and called one of the judges over just to go laugh at his hand, but used all of them at really inopportune times to make it to where I could still set up a pretty good board, even playing through all of that. Through all 3 infinite impermanences, my end board was an Appaloosa for 3, the Union Carrier, Dragite, as well as the Buster Lock on the Boarload Savage Dragon. Again, I think he just didn't know what properly to hit with those impermanences, because he hit stuff like my Seeker Search or my Analyzer Search, and even let the Halka Fibrax play go through but stopped the Link Cross instead, which enabled me to do pretty much everything that I wanted to anyway. No fault of my opponents for sure, but just knowing the matchup and what your opponent's cards do is really crucial to making sure you can actually win the game. He activates Cyber Emergency, which I quickly negate with Dragite. Knowing that the activation was negated, he could still be able to discard a card in order to get it back, but being that he only had 2 cards in his hand, he would be losing so much momentum that it really wasn't worth it to him to try and do that. After that got negated, he quickly scooped, and that was game. Game 2 was against True Draco Monarchs, and that was something that I was definitely not ready to play against at that tournament. I am super reliant on my extra deck, and if I get locked out of it with Domain, I'm in a lot of trouble. Since round 1 finished so early for us, we were able to take a look around and see what everybody else is playing. And knowing that he was playing the Monarch package, I knew I was going to be in real trouble if I was matched up against him. Of course, we lose the die roll, and he gets to go first. My opponent Tribute summons Ignis Heat, sets 2 back row, and then activates Domain of the Monarchs, effectively locking me out of the extra deck. Fortunately for me, I drew Gigantes, which has a second effect that not a lot of people know about, that when it's destroyed by battle, it destroys all spells and traps on the field. My only problem was I had to get something into grave in order to banish it to be able to summon Gigantes in the first place. So, we special summon Petting Cessor, we normal summon our Doki Doki, we discard a level 4, doesn't really matter what I'm trying to get out at this point. I think I send out like a Guardian at this point, just to bait out another interaction. But all I really want to do is have some fodder to be able to summon Gigantes. I had no idea what his 2 back row were, and so trying to do whatever I could to bait those out was really necessary. I was praying for an impermanence on the Doki as a just in case, and that way he would have to waste that. He ends up crackdowning my Guardian, which honestly does absolutely nothing. After that, I special out Gigantes, proceed to battle, crash into his Ignis, and then the damage step was able to destroy all the spells and traps on my opponent's field, including the crackdown to be able to get me my Guardian back. I don't think my opponent knew that Gigantes had a second effect other than just be able to special summon itself, because the last card that he had face down was a Judgment, and if he had just Judgmented that Gigantes, I 100% would have lost that game. Going into main phase 2, all he had was an Ignis Heat on field, nothing in hand, so I knew he would be able to get one search throughout the turn, and then I'd just be able to go off from there. My opponent got his search, drew for turn, quickly scooped, moving into game 2. Thankfully, all of that back row hate that we were side decking came in real handy in this matchup as well. We sided in our Twin Twisters, our Lightning Storms, our Reboots, everything that we could do to make sure that we were going to be able to go off. My opponent goes first, and ends on the exact same board that he did previously. 2 back row, Domain of the Monarchs, and a Tribute Summoned Ignis Heat. Fortunately for us, we did hard draw the Twin Twisters, so I knew that I had to bait out at least one of the back row to figure out what it was. If it was a threat, get rid of it. If it wasn't, use it on the other 2 cards, and we'd be good to go. I start by special summoning Analyzer since my opponent controlled monsters and I didn't. I attempted to deactivate the effect, then my opponent chained the Monarch's Eruption. I knew that was going to be a really big problem card for me, so if that last set card was a Judgments, the game was over, but I had to take the risk. I activated the Twin Twisters, discarding a card, targeting the Domain as well as the Erupt. From there, I normal summoned a Doki Doki, activated Doki's effect, which was met by his Infinite Impermanence, which is set face down. After that resolve, I knew I was winning the game. My opponent had no cards left in hand, all he had was an Ignis Heat on field. I hadn't even entered my battle phase yet, and I still had a Seeker in hand to be able to special summon itself. Eventually I was able to make an access code, along with the rest of my board was easily able to OTK, and we won the match 2-0. Round number 3 we played against Eldritch Invoked, and I wasn't quite sure what my opponent was playing because I frankly didn't see his previous games, so I was a little bit blind going into this. We thankfully did win the die roll and got to go first. I opened up really well, my opponent had no hand traps unfortunately, and I was able to make full combo. After he saw that end board, he said, yep, you got it, and moved directly into game 2. The problem with that for me is I had no idea what he was playing still. He played it really smart by not letting me see what his cards were, so I wasn't really sure what to side. I figured 100% he was going to go first, because after seeing that board and scooping that quickly, I had to assume that he didn't have a lot to be able to out that in the main deck. Game 2 starts, and he starts by activating a Magical Meltdown, which immediately lets me know that I'm going to have to contend with some Mechabas. Thankfully, all his end board ended up being was just a Mechaba in defense mode in the extra monster zone, and 2 back row, and that was it. So I knew he probably had hand traps, 1 interruption in the Mechaba that I had out, and a couple back row that I wasn't quite sure what he was playing with. I managed to get really lucky and open the one of Pankratops in my hand, and I figured at the minimum that would bait out the Mechaba negate. I activated Pankratops, targeting the Mechaba, and my opponent chose to let it go through, which was a little bit surprising, so I wasn't quite sure what else he had in his hand. I normal summoned my Doki Doki, used Doki's effect, discarding Beta. You're going to see that card a lot here. I always seem to open it. I think that's 3 games in a row now that I've seen Beta in my opening hand. That was unfortunately met with there can be only one, so I knew that Doki wasn't going to be able to resolve. In the end phase, my opponent activated a Scarlet Sanguine, being able to summon out an Eldritch the Golden Lord, and I knew after that I was going to be in a lot of trouble. He still had Alistair access, being able to recur it from the graveyard because he hadn't used the effect last turn. He had an Eldritch on the field now, and all I had was a Doki Doki. After drawing for turn and not seeing another out, I scooped and we went into Game 3. Game 3, I sided back in the magical Midbreaker field, as well as all the extenders that I had sided out previously, because I knew that I had to go first here, otherwise I was going to lose. I had enough in my hands where I was able to summon out a Gallant Granite before even committing to my normal summon. My opponent activated an Infinite Impermanence, which I said was perfectly fine, because I was able to summon it out with, you guessed it, the Beta, as well as a couple of other cards. From there I was able to keep going. Thankfully, off of the normal summon of the Analyzer, I was able to hit a Guardian, which basically made it to where I was Nibiru-proof. My opponent drew an Ash Blossom for turn, had the Dark Ruler in his hand, but knew he wasn't going to be able to do anything with it, and then from there next turn I was just going to be able to OTK, so it was a pretty quick Game 3, really unfortunate for my opponent, but that just shows the pure versatility of this deck, being able to play through multiple interruptions like an Infinite Impermanence and a Nibiru, still being able to set up the Buster Lock. Even with the Dark Ruler no more, I probably was going to win the game just because he had nothing else to play, no way to go to his extra deck, and so that Alistair was essentially dead to him. This tournament was only running Swiss, so there was no top cut, so moving into the 4th and final round, I knew we were either going to get 1st place or potentially 3rd place. Unfortunately, I lost the footage to the 4th and final round, which is probably the best match that I had played thus far, so that's really unfortunate, but I can't give you guys a brief recap as to what happened. We were playing the Adamancipator Mirror, unfortunately, and my opponent wins the die roll. He sets up his board, I tried nibbing him, he's able to out it with a Guardian, he sets up his own Buster Lock, and it's a quick game too. From there, a lot of the same thing. I set up my board, he actually Dark Rulers me in attempts to break it, gets all the way through to being able to summon out a lot of his board. I thankfully had kept the Nibiru sighted in, and was able to Nibiru on his turn, breaking my own board, but he had nothing else on field to be able to continue to extend, and I had a Block Dragon on field, so knew was going to be able to recoup my resources, and as soon as I dropped that, we went into Game 3. Game 3 was a really, really good back and forth all the way through. He didn't open fantastic, and I opened a hand trap, so I was able to stop a lot of his plays, but he was still able to make a pretty impressive board. Going into my turn, I actually had to use my battle phase in order to out an Appaloosa as well as a Herald, just to be able to make sure that the rest of my combo would be able to go off. Knowing that I couldn't clear his board and he did have access to Block Dragon, I had to try and set up something in order to break that board, but it wasn't going to be enough in the long run. Eventually, I do deal a little bit of damage to him, and as we're getting close to time, he was able to make an access code and proceed to enter the battle phase with literally 2 seconds left on the clock. It was a really, really close back and forth. Ultimately, my opponent did get the win, and because of tiebreakers as well as a couple of draws earlier in the match, we actually ended up placing 4th out of 24 people. Not the worst placing in the world, but definitely not the first place that we were expecting. All in all, it was a really fun day, and I had a lot of fun playing with my friends who I hadn't seen in a long time. I know Adamantipator isn't the most innovative deck in the world, but again, when you're trying to win, you need to play something that is consistent, and Adamantipator is nothing but consistent. I can say that for certain after playing it for a while. I think we're going to try continuing playing with this deck for a little bit, but definitely want to do a lot of testing with some of the new Numeron stuff that's going to come out in the next Battles of Legend next week, and hopefully we'll have a box opening for you guys ready to go, where I'm going to have 2 boxes ready to open and see what we can pull. We also do a lot of testing on Twitch as well, so if you want to come and check out the stream, link is in the description down below. Just go ahead and follow me at MATTT_6 on Twitch, and you can come and join on the fun. But that's been the locals recap here for this week. Hopefully we can continue the success that we had in previous tournaments going forward and see what the new stuff is going to bring to the table once the new set drops. Until then, this is Matt, and we'll see you in the next one.